I had always been curious about success. Not just the kind that fills bank accounts or grants prestige, but the kind that transforms a person from ordinary to extraordinary. My journey began not in a classroom, nor a boardroom, but in the quiet corners of my mind, where thoughts whispered truths I had ignored for years, distilling their secrets into principles anyone could follow. Hill began with a single powerful idea. Desire is the starting point of all achievement, but not just any desire, the burning, unshakable, all-consuming kind. I remembered my own half-hearted dreams, the ones I wished for quietly in the dark, never daring to pursue. Hill's challenge was different, to define a definite chief aim, something so clear, so urgent, that it becomes the guiding force behind every thought and action. I sat with a pen and paper trying to articulate my goal. It had to be specific. No vague notions of "I want success." Hill instructed me to quantify it, set a timeline, and commit to giving more than I expected in pursuit of it. My goal was ambitious, not just financial independence, but the creation of an enterprise that would impact lives, providing opportunities and inspiring others to reach their potential. Writing it down was transformative. The moment my goal existed in words, it became alive. Next came faith, the unwavering belief in the attainment of that goal. Hill called faith the bridge between desire and reality. To cultivate it, he recommended repeated affirmation, visualization, and an emotional connection to the goal. I began my morning standing before the mirror, speaking my goals as though they were already achieved. I visualized the feeling of accomplishment, the satisfaction of overcoming obstacles, the joy of helping others succeed. Slowly, an invisible confidence started to grow within me, a certainty that success was not a possibility, but an inevitability. Desire and faith, however, are useless without organized planning and persistent action. Hill insisted that a plan must be devised, even if imperfect, and followed through with persistence. I drafted my first roadmap, knowing I would revise it countless times. Each small step mattered, learning about finance, connecting with mentors, testing ideas, and refining my skills. Persistence became my daily ritual, even when setbacks loomed. I realized that obstacles were not signs to quit, but signals to adjust and continue. Hill also emphasized the power of autosuggestion, the process of feeding the subconscious mind positive, goal-oriented messages. My subconscious had been a silent saboteur for years, flooded with doubts and fears. Now it became a partner. I repeated affirmations, imagined success vividly, and infused every thought with emotion. Slowly, intuition sharpened, ideas flowed effortlessly, and opportunities appeared as if guided by an unseen force. But success is never a solitary endeavor. Hill introduced the concept of the Mastermind Alliance, a group of individuals working in harmony toward a shared goal. I began seeking people whose strengths complemented my weaknesses, who brought wisdom, encouragement, and accountability. Together, we brainstormed, planned, and supported one another. The power of shared intelligence, Hill explained, magnifies results beyond what a single mind can achieve. I experienced it firsthand. Collaboration created solutions I could never have conceived alone. Hill's writings also delved into the subtleties of overcoming fear, which he described as the greatest barrier to achievement. Fear manifests in multiple forms: fear of failure, criticism, poverty, loss of love, and old age. I examined my own fears, confronting them honestly. I realized that each fear had a counterpart, a lesson, or an opportunity. By acting despite fear, I cultivated courage and resilience. Every small act of bravery compounded into a new mindset, one that saw risk not as a threat, but as a stepping stone. Another principle emerged: the power of specialized knowledge. General knowledge is abundant, but targeted expertise creates opportunity. I committed to learning deliberately, focusing on areas critical to my goals: financial strategy, leadership, psychology, and human behavior. Knowledge became a tool, and its application became the bridge between thinking and earning. Hill warned that knowledge alone is worthless without action. True value comes from combining learning with initiative. Hill also stressed imagination, the workshop of the mind where ideas are born. I began experimenting with creative problem solving, generating multiple solutions for every challenge. Sometimes ideas seemed impractical, even impossible, but Hill argued that every great achievement begins as a seemingly impossible idea. By exercising imagination consistently, I trained my mind to innovate rather than react. Equally vital was decision-making. Indecision is a trap that wastes time and energy. Hill emphasized that successful people make decisions promptly and revise them slowly. I practiced decisiveness in every area of life, large or small. The result was clarity, speed, and reduced regret. Confidence in decision-making became a self-reinforcing habit. Persistence, Hill's hallmark principle, became my mantra. Success is not linear. Setbacks are inevitable. I faced early failures, projects that collapsed, investments that faltered, opportunities that vanished. Each time I reminded myself of Hill's teachings. Persistence converts failure into experience, teaches resilience, and builds character. Slowly, results began to compound. Effort applied consistently over time transformed into tangible outcomes. By the end of part 1, I had undergone a profound transformation. My thoughts were disciplined, my goals were clear, and my actions aligned with a definite purpose. Napoleon Hill's principles had awakened a new mindset, one that saw opportunity where others saw obstacles, solutions where others saw problems, and potential where others saw limitations. When I picked up where I left off, I realized that the first phase of transformation, clarity of purpose, faith, persistence, and disciplined thought, was only the foundation. Napoleon Hill had taught me that true mastery of success required not just personal growth, but strategic influence, wealth creation, emotional intelligence, and the cultivation of a lasting legacy. Part 2 of my journey would be the crucible in which these lessons were applied, tested, and ultimately mastered. Hill's writings reminded me that influence is not manipulation. It is leadership rooted in service and integrity. To inspire others, one must first inspire oneself. I began by observing the leaders I admired. They exuded confidence, empathy, and decisiveness. They understood human nature, motivating people not by coercion, but by aligning others' desires with a common goal. I adopted this principle by listening more, seeking to understand rather than to respond, and aligning my team's ambitions with the overarching vision. Slowly, I realized that influence flows naturally when trust and respect are established. Hill introduced a concept that resonated deeply: the subconscious mind as the intermediary between desire and reality. While the first part of my journey focused on conscious planning and visualization, part 2 demanded integration of the subconscious into every decision and action. I began monitoring my habitual thoughts, ensuring that doubt, fear, and negativity were replaced with constructive, empowering beliefs. Every night, I reflected on my day, reinforcing positive outcomes and analyzing areas for improvement. Over time, this mental discipline became almost instinctive. The subconscious was no longer a passive bystander. It became an active partner, constantly suggesting solutions and opportunities. Another cornerstone of Hill's philosophy is financial intelligence, the ability to acquire, manage, and grow wealth. I realized that many people struggle not because they lack income, but because they lack knowledge of how money works. I committed to understanding principles of investment, compound growth, asset allocation, and risk management. I applied the lessons carefully, treating money not as a goal, but as a tool to amplify impact. Hill emphasized that wealth without purpose is hollow. My financial strategy always aimed to empower others and create sustainable value. Hill also discussed the power of initiative and self-reliance. While collaboration is essential, relying entirely on others diminishes potential. I trained myself to take proactive steps, anticipating challenges and acting before problems became crises. I stopped waiting for permission or approval. Every decision, every step, became an expression of responsibility and autonomy. Initiative, Hill explained, transforms ordinary people into leaders. It builds credibility, confidence, and momentum. As I advanced, I confronted the principle of emotional mastery. Hill stressed that uncontrolled emotions, anger, envy, fear, and impatience, erode judgment and weaken influence. I began practicing emotional discipline, observing triggers, pausing before reacting, and reframing challenges as opportunities. Gradually, I could navigate high-pressure situations with clarity, diplomacy, and calm. Emotional control became not a suppression of feelings, but an enhancement of judgment and communication. People noticed the difference. They trusted decisions that were informed by reason and tempered by empathy. Hill repeatedly highlighted the importance of persistence coupled with adaptability. Persistence is not blind stubbornness. It is determined effort informed by observation and correction. I faced setbacks that seemed insurmountable: economic downturns, failed partnerships, and personal doubts. But Hill's teaching was clear. Persistent action, coupled with the willingness to adapt strategy, ultimately prevails. I refined plans, experimented with new approaches, and remained steadfast in my ultimate goal. Each obstacle became a teacher rather than a barrier. One of the most profound lessons Hill offered is the use of imagination to create opportunities from adversity. I began viewing challenges as the raw material for innovation. For instance, when a major project collapsed due to unforeseen market conditions, instead of despairing, I dissected every failure point, imagining alternative applications of the same resources and ideas. This approach not only salvaged value from failure, but also generated new streams of opportunity I had never envisioned. Hill called this synthetic imagination, the ability to combine known ideas into new, practical solutions. It became a cornerstone of my decision-making. Another crucial concept is the mastermind principle in its highest form. Beyond collaboration, Hill described it as a synergistic alliance of minds, aligned in purpose and energized by mutual trust. In part 2 of my journey, I expanded my circle, seeking partners who challenged my thinking and pushed me beyond comfort zones. Together, we devised strategies that none of us could have conceived alone. The creative friction within the mastermind catalyzed breakthroughs. Hill argued that this principle multiplies both intellect and energy, and I witnessed it firsthand. Ideas flowed faster, execution became sharper, and success compounded exponentially. Hill also stressed the importance of applied faith, which is faith actively expressed through action. Belief without action is wishful thinking. I practiced this by investing in projects with calculated risk, mentoring others, and consistently putting myself in positions that demanded courage. Faith and action became inseparable. One reinforced the other. When doubt threatened to creep in, I reminded myself that faith without work is hollow, and work without faith is directionless. Together, they created unstoppable momentum. As I progressed, I encountered Hill's principle of accurate thinking. Successful people are not infallible, but they make decisions based on facts, not assumptions. I began analyzing data meticulously, questioning assumptions and challenging conventional wisdom. Decisions became informed and precise, reducing errors and increasing efficiency. This intellectual rigor reinforced confidence and credibility, both in myself and among those I led. A turning point came with Hill's discussion on concentration of effort on a definite major purpose. In part 1, I had defined my goal. Now I had to focus my time, energy, and resources almost obsessively on it. Multitasking and scattered effort dilute results. I streamlined my work, delegated non-essential tasks, and maintained relentless focus on high-leverage activities. The results were striking. Productivity soared, decisions sharpened, and progress accelerated. Hill's final lesson that resonated deeply was the cultivation of a legacy, the impact one leaves beyond wealth or success. True achievement is measured by the lives influenced, the knowledge shared, and the values instilled. I began mentoring aspiring entrepreneurs, creating systems that empowered others to achieve, and contributing to causes that aligned with my principles. Hill's wisdom was clear. Success is not merely personal, it is transformational. The measure of greatness is the breadth and depth of the positive impact left in the world. By the end of part 2, the transformation was profound. Napoleon Hill's teachings had guided me from a dreamer to a doer, from uncertainty to confidence, and from isolated ambition to purposeful influence. I had learned that success is a science and an art, a discipline of thought, an exercise of faith, and a commitment to relentless, purposeful action. The journey did not end with wealth or recognition. It continued in every act of leadership, every challenge faced with courage, every mind inspired, and every life touched. Hill's lessons were not just rules, they were a philosophy, a way of living that empowers ordinary people to achieve extraordinary results. As I reflected, I realized the ultimate lesson. Success is not a destination but a continuous evolution. Desire ignites, faith sustains, knowledge guides, imagination innovates, persistence propels, and legacy immortalizes. Napoleon Hill had given me a blueprint, but the journey is lived every day in thought, action, and service. Success, I understood, is not reserved for a chosen few. It is available to anyone willing to master the mind, harness the power of definite purpose, act with unwavering faith, and persist through adversity. Hill's wisdom had become my compass, guiding me not just to wealth, but to mastery, influence, and a meaningful life. And so the story continues, not with the end of a chapter, but with the ongoing adventure of becoming, achieving, and inspiring.